So the question I want to talk about is whether we need to be more open in experimentation, we scientists. And just so you know who's talking, I'm working in cancer immunology. I think first and foremost we are paid to do good science. So we should, as everybody does, try as hard as possible to answer questions and pose the right questions and so on. And then since science is not like art, where you have one masterpiece and that's it, it's an effort, a continuous effort of many of us. We have to train the next generation, so teaching, I think that's the second most important thing. And finally, I think if you're publicly funded scientists, like many of us are, I think we have an obligation to somehow communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I guess this, if you do animal experiment, also includes explaining this. So now, coming to this animal experimentation, and there, of course, I'm now standing in front of you not as a scientist, but as a person who does this, and these are my thoughts. I think research involving animal experiments will probably always have ambiguities and moral dilemma, because if we don't do the experiment, we don't have people that suffer. If we do the experiments, animals suffer. So there's no good way around it. And I think it's important to mention that nobody has ultimate solutions for these kinds of problems, in my opinion. And I think neither animal activists nor scientists have moral superiority over one another. And these kind of problems, don't have black and white solutions, and that is, I think, why we should discuss and exchange argument to find the best compromise. Basically fighting for the middle ground. And I think this is especially important in times like these, where extremism, the fringes of society, get stronger and stronger, also in politics, like in right-wing politics. I think we really have to talk to to people about animal experiments to get to those that are reasonable, and try to connect to them. So why, in my opinion, why is it not enough openness and communication taking place from the scientist side? I think many of us try to hide and are reluctant to argue with activists or to speak out in public, and I think this has many different reasons. For me, myself, I think it's mostly fear that I expose myself, and it would kind of hurt my family and so on if you get death threats and all these things that you hear. I know that scientists in Berlin have gotten death threats by the phone. The other thing is, I think many of us don't feel they have enough time, and they are too busy. One has to accept that, I guess. I don't want to go into all the details, we can discuss this later. Anyway, but I think we also don't take the concerns of these animal activists seriously enough, the justified concerns. So do we really think enough about alternatives? Is there enough money put into this, and so on? We write this in our applications, but I think we have to earnestly discuss this. And at the Charité, for example, there's at the moment a EARA center built, where they try to get some of the material, human materials, which you otherwise would throw away, to make better experimentation. These efforts have to be discussed. But I think one of the problems is that we see some of them as being totally illogical, and that's a German cartoon saying this is a vegan mindfulness restaurant, and the newest fad they have is non-vaccinated waiters. So we look at them as if they were totally reasonable, and some of them might be, but I think we should look for the ones that we can influence. And this is why I'm showing this slide, because this is what happened here in Berlin. So one of these activist movements that were called Ärzte gegen Tierversuche tried to award this abusive award to a scientist from the center. And that's really a very good scientist and very original work he does, and they tried to put his moral credential into disrespect. And to me it seemed they didn't really want to talk, but they wanted to have a media success and wanted to appeal to the emotions of their supporters. And I think with their supporters they won, because this is from their Facebook page. You can see how they stirred up some of the emotions in their bubble that they live in. One of the ladies says, "Why are such scientists now buried alive so that they know how it feels?" Another lady says, "Cruel mob, I hope you all will soon have to pay for that shit in a very bad way." The next one says, "No inhibition, no empathy, per definitionem psychopaths, and thus they should be admitted to mental institutions." So if you're faced with these kinds of threats, of course you can imagine that one doesn't really want to come out and say, "Okay, this is what I do." But anyway, so what did we do? First I want to really say that I appreciated that the head of the institute, Martin Lohse, stood in front of us and protected all of us scientists, but in particular this one who was singled out. And then we all got together and discussed how we should deal with it. And we decided to come to do a discussion round and to really show that we are open for discussion and critique. And so then there was a mail sent around in the whole institute inviting people who had an opinion on this to join. It was not just scientists, but it could be animal technicians, veterinarians, and so on. And this was also to show solidarity with this one colleague. And importantly, I think in parallel, our communications department went and explained the science, so that in the media, not the populist sentiments were in the center, but rather the kind of scientific questions. And to explain to you the strategy that we used to come up with this picture, I would like to ask my colleague Michael, who basically had the idea to do this.
Yeah, hello. I'm such a psychopath, and my name is Michael Rother. So I must say this comments there on Ärztliche-Versuche webpage is still online while I'm blocked. Okay. So beside all the professional communication that we have seen here, I was asked by Thomas to provide my personal insights that led to the idea with these new science, and to make blatantly clear that scientists are willing to talk. So what I did some time ago was what many people do. I just did a web research on my own. So, and two important notions are made for this. So Google just shows what you're looking for. And the second thing is, what you cannot find on the first two Google pages literally doesn't exist for most of the people. So that's really one very critical point when we talk about presenting our stuff that we want to present. So from the first hits that you got there is from different societies against animal experiments, explaining research with animals to the public, where then like 5 out of 6, one was Wikipedia, and then 7th position was the more our side. So my consequence at this point was then doing what they do, what Ärztliche-Versuche, for example, very active in Berlin, to showing up in public. So what I did was discussing with the critics, going there to their presentations, to their information booths, and try to discuss with them, but with very limited success. Because somehow it appeared to me those people, they already got one truth, they don't need a second one. Okay, so I switched more or less, copy-pasted their strategy by offering also information by myself. So I was standing there with such a similar sign there, and which says, "Animal experiments, talk to me." So the people came and talked to me. They somehow blamed me, they critically, they harshly criticized me, but still they somehow have seen that scientists, that they have argumentations, that we can be reflected, we reflect our work, and that we are not those cruel, reckless people, which is then shown in the social media very often. So I had many talks, many different people, but what I can tell to all scientists is that that there is a very uniform perception of animal experiments, and this is not a good one. So, and what I learned from all my discussions that I did there was, although many of the informations those people like Peter, Tierversuche, provide to the public, they are terribly wrong, but those people are not stupid. I heard it in some discussion in private environment. They are not stupid, they are just very much convinced, one should say. And so due to the lack of information, and knowledge and good explanations from our side, they just follow their own logic as far as they can. They don't have more. So the second point is, if science is giving information, then it's often based on our knowledge, but it's not based on the perception of the experiments to animals that the public has or that those people have. So there is really a huge gap. And two major critiques I can forward to you. So one is that they say, you scientists, you just claim or you pretend that animals do not have to suffer during the experiments. And the second one was, research on animals is outdated. So because there are plenty of alternatives already and you somehow live in the past century. So the take-home question for me always was, from those people who talk to me, if your animal experiments are so easy, why don't you just show exactly what you're doing in your labs? So that was the take-home message also for us.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So I would like to continue by telling you how we approach the strategy. So basically we all decided to take up Micha's idea and have pictures presenting that we are willing to discuss and that we are willing to listen to them. Which I think was a good idea. And I learned from the communications department that the war with pictures is really important in the media. I wasn't aware of this. And basically what turned out, then we had this picture that we are there and we are not few and we face them. Yeah. So 150 employees of the MDC went out to be open and discuss. And they had about 20 people here on campus, which I didn't expect what would happen. We had peaceful discussions with some of them. Of course, we didn't accept the prize. And as I said, the media, the communications department did a really good job in getting the information out right. So this is then one of these situations where we discuss. And you may see me here behind this, the sign of this lady. And this is Dominic, a colleague who does heart and circulation research. And we were talking to her and saying, what about if you consider that we have also moral causes for what we do and so on? And we got into this discussion, and it was okay. She was at least willing to listen, and we were willing to listen to her as well. And that was kind of, I didn't expect that would happen. Anyway, so then the question, is it sufficient to react as we did with this Heart of Stone prize, or should we be more proactive? And to be honest, I think we must be more proactive because it's getting harder and harder, and we should change this. And I think it should be not just junior scientists like Micha or middle of the road, so senior postdoc that I am. But I would wish that some of our heroes that you really have discovered and moved the field forward, like we have at this center, Klaus Rajewski or others, that they would come out and really say, this is what we have discovered, this is the usefulness, and this is how we do it. Because I think that would carry much more weight. And to show you one such positive example, I would like to show you a movie of one of the giants in my field, so cancer immunology. His name is Hans Schreiber. We had him at our institute as an Einstein visiting fellow, and he's one of the pioneers in T cells fighting cancer. Now and this is a movie where he explains to the public what he does, and he also explains that he does animal experiments.
Can still take out parts of this immune system and isolate it genetically and make it effective by putting it back on immune cells that have not failed. We take genes that have the T cell receptor that are specific for cancer and put them on other cells that have previously not seen the cancer and show that these cells can eradicate the cancer and that we do an experimental animals. It's a very effective and very dramatic effects almost, because these huge cancers that are clinically there, they virtually fall apart with virtually no toxicity. The cancer vanishes and the mouse is cured. I'm quite optimistic that treatment of cancer by adoptive T-cell transfer of a receptor that is cancer specific will become a individual cancer therapy and it will be effective. I just like to research. I think it's the secrets, of course, they drive you to solve them. And you could say it doesn't need to serve a purpose. Sometimes it's just interesting to solve something. In this case, I think it's both. It's interesting to solve it, and it can really serve a real immediate purpose. For many cancer patients, if you were, it's dramatic. It's so, dying of cancer, I think, is still something horrible. It takes people out of their best years of life, and it destroys them because of this kind of criminal that's growing in their body. And if you had relatives, like my mother died of cancer, and my best friend died of cancer, and our best friend in Chicago died of cancer, it becomes something that you say, those people who are so healthy, their mind is healthy, everything is well, except you have this growing beast. It's something that really motivates you as a scientist, I think, to find out why can't this be stopped.
This is a really nice example where you, on the one hand, explain the science you do, and on the other hand, come across as a human being and really also talk about your ethical issues, why you're doing this. And I think I would wish that we had more of this, so more of the senior guys coming out. Not that we shouldn't also engage. I put in the title, so do we need to be more open and do we need to communicate more to the public? I think in the phase of dwindling public support, yes, it's high time to explain what we are doing and why we do it. So, thank you for your attention.